Welcome to the Queer Confidence Podcast, the podcast to help you become your most confident queer self. I'm your host, he, she, they, Coach Alex Ray, and I haven't always been this confident. In fact, I used to be super insecure. And through this show, I want to share with you what's worked for me, my clients, and my guests so that you can become more confident. Hello, my unicorns. Today I am back with another guest for you. And also, this episode is capping off what you know now as the Queer Confidence Podcast. And so a couple of things to celebrate today. But we'll get into that at the very end, I think. Let's just focus on the topic at hand. I have with me today Cole Teeter. He is my assistant for like everything within the business, and I'm so thankful to have him. He's such an incredible human. Not only is he just like an amazing help if you need an assistant, let him know. But really, he's just a phenomenal human, and I've really enjoyed getting to know him, and I can't wait for you all to get to know him even more today. So, Cole, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't even have this podcast like getting published online anyway.
It's kind of true. It's very weird for me to think about, but it is kind of true.
Yes. You're creating your own work right now.
I know. I feel very, what is it? Inception. Like, what's happening?
Yes. Great. I'm so glad you could be on here today. We were chatting, what was it, like maybe a month ago, about what it's like being queer in rural America and how most of what we see within the news, the media, et cetera, like everything that we see through media about the queer community pretty much is all about being queer in the big cities, New York, LA, et cetera. And I don't see media that talks about the experience of all of the queer people that we have not in the big cities.
Yes. And I honestly think that does both the queer and the straight community disservice. Like, straight people assume that we're not here, so they can just, I hate to say it, but get away with things. And the queer community doesn't have people saying, yep, we're out here just doing our thing, and this is an option, right? Like, I remember having a conversation with my mother after I came out, and after it took her some time to accept the fact. In identity, I am both trans and I guess you could say bisexual or pansexual. I'm just kind of like, people are people and it doesn't matter. But anyway, I had come out to her as both those. It took her some time, several years for her to like accept it. But one of the conversations we had after she had sort of come around to accepting it was she was urging me to move to Chicago. I had grown up. I grew up and I still live in a semi-rural area of Wisconsin, just outside of Milwaukee. And I live now about 20 minutes away from where I grew up. So it's kind of in the same area. And a lot of my experience with the queer community was in Milwaukee because that was the nearest big city. But my mom, I think, thinks there weren't any queer people in Milwaukee either, and that I should just go to Chicago where everybody will accept me and life will be fine.
Right, that's how it works.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And I actually did consider it, and I realized later that it might have been interesting for a while, but it is not the place where I want to live my life. Like, I'm just not a city kid. And partly it's because I now have a bit of a menagerie of animals. I have a horse, I have 9 chickens, 2 cats, and 2 dogs. So I'm a
Not
bit of a farm kid.
not very convenient to have all those things uh in Chicago.
No, probably wouldn't have happened. Not at all. Although it was really funny. Um, my husband, whom I was dating at the time when we bought this house, when we were looking at houses, he was very insistent. Like he was not moving. We lived in a suburb, a city-ish, one of the bigger suburbs of Milwaukee, and he was adamant. He's like, I do not want to be any more uh closer to the city than we are now. Like
Mm,
we're moving out of the city to one degree or another. And then after we bought the place and we got the chickens and we built our own chicken coop and we did all this stuff not too long after we bought the house. And he texts me one day and he's like, "Did you ever think you would live on a place where we'd have all these animals and all this stuff?" And I'm like, I texted him back. I just said yes. And I think he was a little bit floored. Like he didn't expect all of it, but I was like, no, this is totally according to plan. Like I didn't
yeah.
have a plan, but like I'm like, nope, this is my life. This is how I want to be.
Hmm.
So it was pretty funny. He was a bit more of a city kid growing up than I was, so maybe that was why with the disconnect. But it was pretty funny when I just said yes, like he didn't expect that at all.
It also, I think it just goes to show, like, hello, being queer does not equal your interests, your likes, your like your our personalities
Yes,
don't just
yes,
revolve around our queer identity.
yes. That has been that is always really interesting to me because like why can't I be a queer kid that likes having animals and living out in the country and having raccoons walk through my yard and like why why should those things be different? I always
Hmm.
really had trouble with that. Like I don't know. It wasn't something that ever like stuck for me. I'm like I'm all these things at the same time and unfortunately you just got to deal with it.
How about fortunately? I mean, thank you for not being just one dimensional.
You're welcome. Like I think you're welcome.
Yeah,
Um
thanks for being you.
all right. Well, that you're definitely welcome for that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I just find it really interesting that this is not part of the larger narrative. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I mean, we have neighbors. One of our neighbors, I've never asked, and that's part of I think living a bit rurally is it's like kind of still a little bit of like don't ask, don't tell.
Mm,
Um, and I've got one neighbor that's two women who we've become friends with, and because our dogs love each other, our two dogs, and they've got one dog, but it's two women who own a house, and like I think, I mean, I have no reason to disbelieve that they're in a relationship, but we never talk about it. Like we've never said
mm,
anything to them, and they've never said anything to us either. But we do wear wedding rings, like the both of us, and we walk our dogs like twice a day, every day. Like we do vaguely coupley things. Although I mean, we are neither of us are particularly queer presenting either. Like
mm,
we
mhm.
don't have there's no rainbows on our cars. Like and I don't make any particular effort to present in a straight way. Um, I do notice that I get read more readily. Like if the topic comes up, I am more readily read as at least queer compared to my husband.
Mm.
But it is a bit of like don't ask, don't tell. Like I've just noticed in our neighborhood here, where it's just you're fine. Like we've never had any direct confrontation with like neighbors or anybody at the store or anything like that. But we aren't super like if you squint, you can tell, but if you like don't want to know, it's not obvious. And I don't know if that's just natural part of our personalities or if that's part of just having uh being in sort of a sometime it's not a I don't know. It's hard for me to make a comparison. Is it a directly hostile environment? A lot of people might think so. Like politically, it can be a bit rough.
Mm.
If you're especially if you're more left leaning.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never had any directly like I've never had anybody confront me and say, "You're queer, get out of here," or anything like
Good.
that. So that's my sort of overall perspective on being queer in the country, I think.
I'm so glad you shared that because I feel like that's not what you just shared is not the narrative that we hear. I think for people that
Yeah.
don't live in rural areas, people that live more in cities, like I'm used to hearing the how scary it is to live in the country
Mm-hmm.
and like maybe it would be if you chose to be more more of a vibrant unicorn like
Yes. I
you know but
yeah.
also like that's not who you are, that's not how you want to be.
I
you
don't
you don't
yeah.
prance around in tutus all day,
No.
right?
No.
Just in private, no.
Yeah.
Just while riding horses.
Yes.
But yeah, I think what we're hopefully what everyone gets to hear from this conversation today is that queer people come in every single variety and flavor, and that no matter where you personally lie on that spectrum, you are not wrong and you don't need to be more of anything else that you aren't. Like, just be you, and you are perfectly queer enough as you are.
Exactly. I think I went through a point where I wasn't sure that it was I wasn't sure whether like I was supposed to do something like I was supposed to represent somehow. And I've sort of let that go in terms of I'm just going to be me. And I've had
Mm-hmm.
people ask me somewhat friendly questions, somewhat invasive questions. For a time, I was working at a homeless shelter, and I would work there on weekends, and people would ask me for whatever reason in that environment. I think people would get a little bit bored, especially on the weekends, and they would ask questions, right? And I remember getting some nice questions and some kind of rude questions, and I don't
Do you have
think
any like examples that you're okay with sharing? Like, I'm
I'm
just wondering
trying.
what these questions are that are rude.
I uh I think well, being trans, just about any question about surgeries or like medical information feels really
Oh,
uncomfortable.
yeah.
Um I
So these people knew.
yeah, so they were
Okay.
aware. Like and even before I did much in the way of physical transition, I would I would pass for male sort of
Hmm.
sometimes kind of intermittently. It was very weird. But then I would get all these questions like, "Oh, did you do this? Did you do that?" And those questions are quite invasive and rude, I feel. Not everybody, some people are perfectly willing to answer those questions, but it was really uncomfortable at the time.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
and
no one asks non-trans people like, "Hey, what's your medical history? What
right?
surgeries have you had in your life? Do you have your wisdom teeth still?" Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
It would just be weird if we went around asking those things. So it's
yes,
yeah, it's no
absolutely.
one's business. They can share it if they want to, but like um
I mean, and I have shared it in relative, when it is pertinent, relevant to the conversation and the people that I'm with, I feel like I would be safe to share that information with. Like
Yeah.
that's not, I don't have a problem doing that, but it is very relevant to the situation and the people that you're around.
Yeah.
So,
The
but
stranger that you just met at the homeless shelter really doesn't need to know. They're just like
absolutely.
very curious slash well, I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe they are just very curious, but like, okay, like just keep your question to yourself. It's not
I just,
like
yes. And I think at the time, especially, I think it's like one of those when you're the first trans person that somebody has met, they sort of like offload all those questions that they have onto you.
yeah.
And I don't like in day-to-day life, I'm not very open about it at all. Like I don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's partly because all of that is I just kind of feel like it's nobody's business. I
Mhm.
it's just I am perfectly happy to be like I have just set up a new profile on Mastodon and I put in there that I'm trans because partly because connecting to other people in the circles that I'm in there who are trans is important to me. But it's like I don't
Mhm.
talk about it on my timeline.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I feel like representation is important and standing up and saying, "Yep, I'm part of your community," but like that doesn't mean that discussing all the details is like an appropriate thing to do in all contexts.
Yes. I mean, what even is the difference between that and just sharing any other like personal medical information such as like oh I can talk in generalities about my ADHD but no one needs to know every single like trauma that I've ever experienced because of it. How about like
Yeah,
my depression, right? Like there are
yeah,
multiple things that like you can share the surface level with people, but most people don't really need to know all the details of that.
yeah,
um
yeah,
and
for sure.
yeah. So you're this 100% makes sense. Also, like no one walks around just like at the grocery store being like, "Hi, I am depressed or I have depression. Here's what I'm medicated with." Right? Like
Yeah,
no one's
like
doing that. So
yeah,
there's no reason that anyone who's trans should be doing that and going dancing around telling everyone, "Hey, here's
yeah,
hi,
exactly.
I'm trans, and also here's what that means for me."
Right? Exactly. It's I think I think it's funny because we sometimes I feel a little bit guilty because it's like I kind of I fly under the radar in some senses because I'm not like I don't have a sticker on my car and I don't walk around with although as much as I love rainbow stuff like I don't walk around with rainbow clothing like I don't
Hmm.
represent but it's not I don't know I it's but also I really just don't want to deal with the potential confrontation that may result.
Yeah.
And I think things have improved in some sense, but also then again, a couple of when school started, the school district, one of the school districts, well, excuse me, one of the school districts in the area was like banning the use of preferred pronouns, like in the high
Mm.
school.
Oh my
I'm like,
god.
I was floored. And so I feel like things have improved on some level. Like there are people in the area, local people that I have come out to through uh, work or other things that may know some more. Like they know I'm married to a man, and there's other. So there are. It does come up, and I'm not shy when questioned, but I think it is a balancing act. And I think it's a different balancing act here than it is in other areas of the country. And
Hmm.
just, uh, like if I lived 40 minutes away where I'm closer to the city, I think it would be a different balancing act. But I think it's just being aware that if presenting very queerly to you is a priority, you're going to have different concerns when you live here versus when you live in the when you live in the city. And I wish that that was different. Like, I wish that that wasn't true.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I just don't. You have to be aware. You have to take responsibility for your own safety too.
Hmm. Yeah. And also, I just want to add in there, because I think there is this sort of element of our culture that has kind of shamed this. There is absolutely nothing wrong with presenting however you want. Just
Mm-hmm.
because you're queer does not mean you were supposed to, or that it would be better for you, or that you would be a better queer person for like walking around with stickers on you. Like,
Yeah,
there's
I.
nothing. Everyone gets to choose the how they actually want to present in life, whether they're queer or not. It doesn't make any sense that we would
Mhm.
then put pressure on everyone in our community to be like, okay, well, you really need to lead with this part of your identity. There's so many parts to every single human. Some
Mhm.
of us, it's a part that we really like making the forefront.
Mhm.
Some of us, it's a part that we really like letting just fade to the background.
Yeah.
Neither one's better. Neither one's right or wrong.
I think that's tough. I think, especially, so I came of age around the early 2000s, and there was a lot of pressure at the time because marriage equality hadn't passed.
Hmm.
There was a lot of pressure at the time, I feel like, to be loud and be, seen and be counted.
Hmm.
And that has gone down, I think, in some ways. Although a lot of the backlash against trans people um, has put some pressure. I feel like there is some pressure on people that are, adult, grown, settled, and that you should be representing, that you should. And I honestly don't think, in general, I don't think that anybody should feel pressured to present or talk about or do things that they're not comfortable with. But
Yes.
there is still some, I feel like some external pressure that I've taken on and placed on myself that says, oh, you should be louder about it. You should, do these things. And um, I don't feel like that's fair. I don't think, like, it's a tough balance. And I wish that as minorities, it wasn't our responsibility, to uh, make the change. But I don't see any other option. So for the people that are willing to be out and loud and present in their communities, like, you have my undying gratitude. You do, because we need the people that are willing to do that. It's just that I am not. Like I said, I'm perfectly willing to talk about it, but it's not at the forefront of my day to day life.
Yeah.
And um, yeah,
I think I 100% agree with you. I mean, it's similar with politics. Like, I don't want to be a politician, right?
right,
At all. But
right.
we can all have opinions. We can all share them. We can all help drive things toward a direction we think is right or better
Mm-hmm.
in our
Mm-hmm.
own way. And that doesn't mean that we all have to be activists in the same way. So, yeah, that is a
Yeah,
very unfair pressure that I should not be on anyone.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I wanted to ask you, so like, what do you actually love about your experience of being queer in rural America?
I hmm, I really enjoy the peace and quiet. Like, I just I remember when I first started dating my husband, he he had an apartment that was definitely more in the city, and I would go. there was times where I would go back and forth between my parents' house out here and then his apartment. And I remember coming home to my parents' house and just going, it's so quiet. And it's just like just physically quiet. And then
Mm.
I really enjoy the fact that my I can't see into any of my neighbors' windows. Like, it was really funny when we were looking for a house because that was like one of the requirements that my husband had. Like, I don't want to be able to see into anybody's windows, like,
Yeah.
period, full stop. And I had a conversation with our one next door neighbor. So the house we bought it from some flippers, and they had renovated the entire interior of the house, and they'd also put a garage up, and it's a separate garage. So it's like between our kitchen and our neighbor's kitchen. And apparently, before they put that garage up, I found out from my neighbor that she could see directly into our kitchen.
Oh, lovely.
So I was like, okay, well, that was, I guess, good to know. We dodged a bit of a bullet there. I just remember that specifically being a requirement, and then like her mentioning that, and that was a couple of years after we moved into the house, right? And
Oh
her mentioning that,
no.
and I just laughed because I was like, that was really funny how that happened, and we were super lucky to find this house. It's we're on an acre, and it's in an older neighborhood, so it has a smaller house. And since we weren't planning on having kids, we didn't want a big house. Like we were just like,
Hmm.
I do not want the maintenance and upkeep of having a large house. So we found a smaller house on a bigger lot, which is exactly what we were looking for. And I I just uh, laughed because uh, that was one of those things that was so central to when as we were going through houses and like looking at pictures and all the things. Like we had this checklist of like we'd really like it to be at least an acre, and we don't want neighbors too close, and all of these things. And I love where we ended up, because we do have a bit of a neighborhood. Like we have maybe 20 houses that are pretty close, but past that there's farm fields.
Hmm.
And um I just am so grateful for the place we found. We found this place, we were able to buy it, and all of the things happened so like in perfect alignment for that to happen for us. What else do I love? I really love actually driving my car.
Mm.
Like getting in the car and having a place to go where I can just kind of like put the pedal down and just go. Like
Hmm.
that was part of my growing up that I missed living in the city. Like, yeah, there's somewhere to go. Uh, and I honestly, I really love the countryside in Wisconsin. We have these like beautiful rolling hills in some areas. We have it's just a really unexpectedly beautiful place to live. I've had multiple people comment on like how pretty it is here. We
Hmm.
have four seasons that, change things up. I'm not a super huge fan of winter, but I do enjoy the snow when we get it. Um, what else do I love living out here? Um, yeah, and I think I love the ability, I love having animals. Um, and I'm really grateful for the neighborhood we live in. People are relatively friendly, like, but not invasive. I sort of feel
Hmm.
like we dodged a bit of a bullet on that. Like, nobody is like trying to get all up in our business and
Hmm.
watch us and, all those things. So, um, we do, we have a town that's pretty close where we have a Starbucks and another coffee shop and a grocery store. So things are, at least where we're at right now, things are somewhat close. We're not so far out, but yeah, I just it was just living in an apartment feels like there's a part of me that felt like I had to be like turned on all the time because having
Mm.
people around all the time. And now I feel like this morning I went out my PJs to take the dog out to pee. And like, would I do that when I lived in town? No, I wouldn't.
Well,
There's
I'm
too
the
many people
weirdo that
around.
walks around in a bright ass pink bathrobe, and all the neighbors are like, "What's going on?"
I aspire to that, but I just, nope, not there yet.
Again, it's okay. I wear the queer card proudly.
All right. No,
I'm not
absolutely.
I'm not the weirdest thing they ever saw though. I was FaceTiming my boyfriend the other day and he's like, "Are you walking the dog in your bathrobe in your neighborhood?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm not the weirdest thing they'll see." As I said that, I look up and this woman riding a bike with a macaw, those big parrots sitting
Yeah.
on her shoulder. She's riding past. She screams out, "I love your bathrobe and I love that you are wearing it." And I was like, you know what? Look, there's a lady riding a bike with a 4 foot long parrot. Um, I'm really not the most interesting thing out here. Okay. Point
Yeah.
made.
Check. Oh my gosh.
uh
That is funny. And I sometimes I wish there was somebody stranger than us out here. There probably is. They exist somewhere. I just haven't seen them yet. Although there was this little old lady, like couldn't be more than 5'10", or no, not 5'10", 4'10", like
mhm.
little old lady who used to walk her Great Dane in town. Like it looked like the dog weighed more than she did.
Mm.
And I loved seeing her out there. She's just walking along, and her dog is just like walking along next to her, and they were just so cute. But we just don't have that kind of a thing around, and I do kind of miss it a little bit. Like just like the what factor? What's happening?
Right. The people watching.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Well, I have one more question for you,
Okay.
and that is like, what would you like to see be portrayed more, whether it be in media or whatever, more about what it's like being queer in rural America?
I would just like to see it normalized more.
Yeah.
So I I'm unfortunately I don't keep up that well in like media, but the portrayals of queer people, rural queer people, in my experience, like things I've seen have been kind of awful. Like
Mm.
when Matthew Shepard was murdered, that was very present. I was coming of age at that point, and then the other movie, Boys Don't Cry, came out just as I was sort of figuring out the trans thing. And those were terrifying things to see as a young queer person.
Hmm.
And yeah, I would just like to see a show that's maybe maybe not about queer people, but that just normalizes, yep, we're out here, we're just doing our thing, we don't bother people, you know, we're just, we're just living our life. We don't need to be, I mean, I would just like to see it present more, not
Hmm.
necessarily in a tokenizing way, but like just have people show up and like make it, that doesn't need to be super obvious. Like a lot of us aren't super obvious. Like,
Mm.
so, just normalize it, just have it be present. And I just, if there's any examples of that and people want to tell me about it, I'd love to see it. But yeah, I like the experience I've had in media has just been like, oh, it's completely awful and you're going to be dead.
Right.
Like,
You'll get
oh,
shot.
yeah,
The end.
yeah.
Yeah.
Although I will say that I do not go into bars around here. We have a lot of bars as Wisconsin, but
Mm.
Not at least not much. We do have one bar that has really, really good food we go to sometimes. But yeah, I would just like to see it show up in a way that's not tokenizing or like patronizing, but just like, yep, it's normal.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for starting that here today. I feel like we accomplished that. It's just normal. There's nothing like all that weird and crazy and different about being a queer person in a rural area. You just have the same difference in many ways that like non-queer people have in city living versus rural living, but like
Right? Yeah,
you're not some
exactly.
kind of weird ass strange swamp monster.
Right?
Um so thank you. Is there any like final encouragement or reminder that you want to give our listeners today?
I just want to say like to people that if you do not want to live in the city, then don't. Just decide
Mm,
what it is you're willing, don't be don't assume that the only way to be queer is to live in a city where, that you will not be accepted at all if you live out in the country. I don't think have um, had any particularly horrible experiences. And I think it's an option. I mean, I wouldn't blindly say, oh, there's no risk to it. I don't think that we are as a country and as a society. I don't think we're there yet. I wish we were, but I don't want to discourage anybody that says like, look, I want to have like a little farm or I want to not live right on top of my neighbors or, whatever it is that you want. I think it's an option for you and just, you know, decide to go for it.
I love it.
That's what you want. Go for it.
That is the message like we all need, is isn't it?
Yes. And I think that's true for a lot of things. Like, just decide what it is you want and go for it. Don't assume that just because you don't see anybody else doing it, that it's not possible. Like, it is
Mm,
possible. It's always possible.
yeah. I love it. Cole, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you so much for helping normalize being queer in rural America or rural anywhere for that
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Um, and for just sharing parts of yourself with us today. I appreciate you being
You
here.
you are so welcome. Happy to be here.
Love it. And we can give everyone just like a sneak preview of what our plan is. So we're going to be changing the format of the podcast slightly,
Yeah.
to give you all what I believe is going to be a more polished, more fun, more informative, more useful, consistent, and I don't know any more adjectives, content.
Those are good. Those are good adjectives. I like those.
Okay, great. And so you and I are going to be spending some time over the next month like doing some planning, right? And
Mm-hmm.
um contacting guests and such. And
Mm-hmm.
so everyone, thank you so much for being on this journey with us. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
for listening to the podcast. And have some patience with us. We will be back by the beginning of February, maybe a
Yep.
little bit sooner. And can't wait for what 2023 has to offer.
Yeah. I'm really excited. I think it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to add as far as the podcast goes?
Uh, I would love any feedback. Like if people do have thoughts, ideas, anything like that, definitely reach out to us. I think the email address is support@coachalexray.com.
Yep. That'll go to us, or podcast@coachalexray.com. Either
Okay.
one.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, if you have ideas, especially ideas for guests or topics, we'd love to hear
Mm-hmm.
it.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
do you have any like links or anything that you want to share with our listeners today?
Um,
You don't do a
I
lot of social medias, so I didn't know if there was anyone that you were like,
I I've been doing a lot of this Mastodon thing lately, so
okay.
I will give that out. And I will put a link in the show notes because I'm gonna say it and you're gonna be like, what? Um, so my handle is at the cat was not at hackeroom.io, and it's a tech focused instance there. But if you are on Mastodon, you know that like they're all sort of interconnected, and you can follow from just about you could follow from just about anywhere.
Okay.
Um, and I like I said, I will put a link to that in the show notes because it's Mastodon is a little bit confusing, but it's kind of like Twitter. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, I will give you all one little sales pitch here because I do want to make sure that you are getting the support you need, especially during this holiday season. So while we are taking a break from the podcast, the membership is going to be going strong, and we would absolutely love to have you in there. It's an incredible space where you're going to get support from me. I'm going to be working with you directly in there. And you're also going to get the opportunity to get support from your fellow
Mhm.
peers. So if you're needing a little extra support this holiday season and you want to get some extra something, something, especially while the podcast is taking a break, come on in. It is the best space to do it.
Mhm.
And we have so much fun in there. We would love to have you join us. And that's it. I'll leave it right there. And I hope to see you inside.
It's so much fun. Come join us.
It really is. And I also just want to say thank you all for being such loyal listeners and being with us through this journey. I'm so excited for this next chapter, and thanks for coming along on it with us. So, as a special thank you, we are gifting you all 50% off of your first month of the membership. All you need to do is use the code that is down in the show notes of this episode, and that code will be available until the podcast resumes. And thanks for being here again, Cole. I so appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep.
We'll see everyone next year.
Bye.
Bye. If you enjoyed this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend so they too can become more confident. You can also help more people find the show by leaving a 5-star review wherever you listen. And if you want to become a more confident queer with support from yours truly, head to coachalexray.com or use the link down in the show notes. I'm looking forward to working with you.